Just waiting for 1 o'clock. Okay, it's 1 p.m. Welcome everyone. Welcome staff, council. We have some guests with us that will be introduced shortly. This is our council meeting today of Tuesday, February 23rd, and it's 1 p.m. And I'll call the meeting to order at this time. We'll ask at this time also for a moment of silent reflection so we may reflect upon our duties of today. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'll ask council at this time if there's anyone with a declaration of pecuniary interest to announce now or at time of. Seeing no hands, thank you. I'm looking for an approval of the agenda today on February 23rd, 2021. Be approved to circulate it. Councillor War. Candace, you had, sorry?
It needs to be amended, Mayor, because of R2.
Exactly. Thank you. I knew I meant to say that, as amended. Councillor War, you still make that motion? Thank you. And Councillor Archer, second it. All in favor, please. And that's carried unanimous. Okay, on to staff and committee reports. So R1, Candace, our CAO clerk treasurer. This is regarding our municipal modernization program and a presentation of the line-by-line budget review by Strexer Harrop and Associates. And I'll have Candace, you want to introduce our guest, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mayor. So today we are going to be presented the final report that has resulted from the municipal modernization program, where the township received funding to take on a line-by-line budget review. That scope of work was awarded to Strexer Harrop and Associates. And township staff, as well as a couple members of council, have been working with them since December in order to get this project completed in time to be presented to the province within the timeline. And it has been a wonderful process, and we've made it. It was a tight timeline. So there was a lot of hard work done by our consultants. So I wish to thank them very much for all of their hard work and diligence in keeping us on time for this one. With us today, we have Adrienne Harrop. I'm not sure where she's going to show up. Oh, and Linda has changed her name on her screen, so you'll know which one is which. So Adrienne Harrop and Linda Curtin are here to present today's presentation that was included in your agenda package, but we'll go through it. So which one of you are going to be presenting today, or is it going to be a shared approach?
I'm just going to introduce the project and introduce Linda, and then she will present.
Okay.
Am I going to share my screen, or are you going to be in control of that, Candace?
I can give you permission to share. It may be easier rather than just telling me to flip slides all the time. It may be easier for you. Sure. So I will try to give you that permission while you're.
Yeah, I'll introduce.
Can you also give me permission? I don't know if I need to do it, and then I can use my mouse to point to things on the screen.
It's different with a webinar than a meeting. And I'm not sure in the webinar I can give you permission to do that, actually, by the looks of it. So our council meetings are a webinar, not a Zoom meeting, where you have all of those options to share controls. Doesn't look like I have the ability to share control with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Being a webinar. So unfortunately, you're stuck with me. So we will do our best to get through this. And hopefully you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you everyone for having us. My name is Adrienne Harrop. I'm the principal consultant at Strexer Harrop and Associates. Our team has been working hard over the past couple of months to provide you with this detailed line-by-line budget review. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. Today's presentation is just the highlights of the report. If you have any questions, we just ask that you wait until the end of the presentation. And as we go through, hopefully we'll answer some of those questions. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Linda Curtin. Linda has been a chartered accountant for over 20 years and has worked with a variety of industries, including nonprofit, municipal, and in the private sector in manufacturing and technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrienne. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to work on this project. We definitely appreciate your support, and we hope that you're pleased with the report that we've presented to you. You've received the report ahead of time. There's a lot of numerical data in it. There's a lot of numbers to digest. And the purpose of today's presentation is to just bring the highlights to your attention. If you have any questions about anything that we don't speak about today, please ask. I ask you to remember there's kind of two big takeaways from the report, and the report is to be used as a tool that looks at the past but will help guide you into the future. So the numbers shouldn't be looked at in isolation without knowing the story or why it happened. And we've spent some time with your staff, with some members of council to help understand that, although we just have privy to the numbers at this point, and there's a lot of detailed information in behind that perhaps would add some of the story. So my one thing is just don't take the number by itself in context. Always ask the question of why. We've condensed it down to a handful of slides. They're not going to coincide with the report that you have. However, the slides are identical. It's just the number will change. And I'll go through it as we go, just to give you some context of where you can find the information. Okay. Okay, so as we said, this is a 3-year budget review from 2017 to 2019. It doesn't include the library or the cemetery. The purpose was to recognize new budget strategies to increase budget accuracy and identify gaps in supporting evidence-based decision-making processes and identify best practices. We have spoke with all the department heads. We had an opportunity to speak with selected council members, and of course, with a lot of input from Candace. Thank you, Candace. We did a detailed review from a line-by-line budget, expense, and revenue view. We did a benchmark analysis. Overall, I'll be perfectly honest, when we first took on this project, I was expecting a little bit of a mess, and we were quite surprised. I shouldn't say quite surprised, we were very surprised to find that you have an overwhelmingly positive budget process. We didn't identify any big red flags throughout the issue. We did come up with some recommendations from a process standpoint that we believe will help you in the future. And we have an opportunity to save approximately $15,000 to $18,000 annually with just on certain specific line items. Okay, overall leading practices. The township has a very effective budgeting process. That's hats off to everybody involved. It's a line-by-line budget process. It's a high level. It's completed and it's shared with the public at the beginning of each year. And I believe that time frame has shortened down. Now it's in January. It used to be in March and April, so that's excellent. The leadership team is a very cohesive group that participates in building the budget. Everybody is involved and knows their line items. The township has a method to monitor actual spending. So there's variance analysis done. There's comparisons to actual throughout the year. You have an asset management plan in place. Your strategic plan is in place to guide decision-making. And overall, everybody in the municipality is interested in searching for betterments in financial accountability. Thank you. So this is the first slide. I'll just follow along with the main report. This is the overview of your corporate revenue. It breaks down, or it takes away the department view and it looks at it from a high level view. We separated it into two pieces. We pulled out the grants conditional from the province and from the federal government, any gas tax. And then we also looked at the revenues that are solely driven by the municipality. The conditional grants represent 52%, 25%, and 35% respectively of your total revenue over the 3-year period. This includes both operating and capital funding. The township-driven revenues themselves increased from 17 to 18 by 1.9% and 4.5% in 18 to 19. And a big piece of that is user fees, licenses and permits, and investment income. In the underlying slides, I hope you've had the opportunity to look through it. We do break down every department on a similar basis, and we'll speak to each department as we go through it. Okay. Okay, corporate summary by expenditure type. This slide is very similar to the revenue slide. What it does is it picked up the key items in each department to highlight what is really driving the expenses. These 15, or there's 25 line items, represent 85% of your total expenses. The top 3 line items, materials, roads, contract services, and salary and wages, represent 70% of your total expenses. So that can give you some perspective from a high level view of where you really need to concentrate on and make sure the accuracy of your budget numbers, and that where you put your emphasis in spending the most time. They're not necessarily the largest expenditures under the township, but they're pertinent to each department underneath. It doesn't surprise me, the top 3 people, human talent is the biggest part of any operation. So that's not surprisingly. Your contract services and your roads, your transportation being your biggest group. So none of it's out of the ordinary. Oh. Okay, thank you, Candace. Oh no, it's Adrian controlling it. Thank you. So what we've done for each department is we've broken down this same information in a visual format. And what this does is it takes the corporate revenue that was in the previous chart and it plots it. And there's 2 takeaways from each graph. One, the blue line represents the budget amounts for the township over the 3-year period. And those numbers can be tied directly in to the summaries by department, or in this particular case, it's the corporate summary. And the burgundy line is the actual amount that happened that year. So it shows the trend in the budget, and it actually shows the variance from budget to actual. Within the appendices, there is a detailed line by line that will show you the difference in budget to actual. We haven't included it in our discussions for today, but it is there if you want to refer to it. So from a corporate revenue standpoint, from 2017 to 2019, the township budgeted revenues increased from 1.4 to 4.5. And any variances that were over budget included user fees, licenses and permits, and investment income. And as you can see, your revenue is over budget in all 3 years. Okay. From an expense point of view, it's the same chart outlining the budget to actual over the 3-year period. From 2017 to 2019, you can see that trend of the blue line increasing. Your expenditures increased by 6.8% and 3.9% respectively. When you look at this chart, though, what it tells us is actual expenditures compared to budget are within a 2% variance in all 3 years. So if you look at 17, it's very, very close. If you move your eye up to 18, there's a small variance, but it's still within 2%. And then in 19, it becomes closer again. So that's a pure reflection of the budgeting process that's in place and ensuring that actuals and budget are aligned. And I'll just make a note too, there was a large item in 2018 related to the public works land acquisition expenses, and we didn't include it in this comparison because it threw everything out of whack. So we just backed out that one particular line item. Okay. Right, from a benchmark overview, there's 444 municipalities in Ontario. We wanted to find some that were similar to yours. We looked at population, land areas, geographical areas, recreation facilities, and a mix of wastewater and water services. We found 5 peer municipalities, all in the lower tier, with similar populations, similar household, and similar land. We looked for items that only had one arena, i.e. they didn't have other facilities, pools, etc. And we also looked for farmland because there's a big variance in the taxable assessment of farmland. The benchmark, please remember that it's a non-direct comparison from a service level. So the benchmark is simply a mathematical calculation based on the information that we were able to obtain from the FIRs on a numerical basis only. So although it's a great start for comparison, please keep in perspective that it's a non-direct comparison from a service level point of view. Okay. Overall, we did a comparison in each department from Norwood Asphodel's operating expenses to their peer communities. This is a snapshot in time. We use the most recent FIR information. It was based on 2017, 18, and 19. Planning and development, recreation services, and general government, you were all an average as a percent compared to your peer communities. Environmental services, you were below average. Protection services, below average. And transportation services, above average. Okay. So within the 6 departments that are reported on the FIR, they group your departments into a little different level. So we have grouped it according to FIR for benchmarking purposes. So as we go through each graph, there's a note on the top to tell you what departments is included. So for general government, it includes council, administration, and facilities, and that's listed just above the graphs. Combining those together, if you look at the chart on the left, that's a general government revenue, not including grants. Revenues were higher than budgeted in all 3 years. It was strictly driven by donation revenue and an increase in rental revenue, with investment income being one of the largest variances from actual to budget. And then if you look at the right-hand side, comparing the government expenses of actual to budget, you'll see that they're very, very much in line with each other. So there's very little variance in each year in these 3 departments. To compare that same information against your peer communities, the administration or general government costs in Asphodel-Norwood are lower than most of their peer communities on a per capita basis. On average, Asphodel-Norwood administrative salary, wages, and benefits are 40% lower than peer communities. And you can see by looking at the chart kind of where you fall in that compared to the communities that we chose. Okay. Environmental is the next department. It represents 3% of your tax levy. This does not include water and wastewater. We kept that separate just because the numbers are very much higher, and we'll go over that in the next slide. Just for environmental services, your landfills, user fees are consistently higher than expected. The gap over the 3-year period is closing as a greater focus has been put on waste diversion and recycling programs. And you can see that by looking on the right-hand side, the environmental revenue. The gap between the actual and budget is slowly getting smaller and smaller over the 3-year period. On the right-hand side, from an expense perspective, the variance from budget to actuals were due to tax assessment changes not planned, and an increased cost in consulting fees. However, in 18 and 19, there's very little budget to actuals, which again is attributed to the budgeting process and the accuracy that the department is achieving. Okay. And then wastewater and water. There is detailed information for each Norwood Water, Trent View Water, and wastewater in the appendices. This rolls it up all into one. Revenues are consistent year over year with very little variance from budget to actual. And from an expense point of view, on the right-hand side, expenses in 18 were above budget due to a variance in maintenance costs. And in 2019, maintenance costs were less than budget, driving a positive actual variance. So you can see the red line actually dips below your budgeted costs. And there is also significant changes in negotiations where you're going to see wastewater expenses decrease. And I'm assuming you will see that in the 2020 and 2021 budget and actuals. Okay, wastewater benchmarks. As on a comparison to the peer communities, Asphodel-Norwood is below the average water and wastewater rates per household. A consumption rate of 0.7 cubic meters per day was used to calculate this. So when we looked at the peer municipalities, everybody had a different way of calculating. Some were flat rate, some were usage rate, some were a combination. We didn't have anything directly comparable. So we worked out a price per cubic meter per day in order to graph everybody and make it apples to apples. Okay. Wastewater and water benchmarks as a percentage of wages and benefits and contracted services. Asphodel-Norwood spends 13% of its water revenue on salaries and wages and benefits and contracted services, which is well below the peer communities. The average for the peer communities is 59%. And that is reflective of the organizational structure that Asphodel-Norwood has. You operate under a very small footprint with very few people in the waste and wastewater capacity, and that's reflective of this graph. So it has its benefits and it has its downfalls as well. With limited people, you'll see one of our recommendations is to have a continuity plan to help backfill that information. And we'll get to that area in a little bit. Okay, planning and development actual to budget. This includes planning and zoning and economic development. I just want to bring your attention to the scale on the left-hand side, the planning and development revenue. It is very small. So although visually it looks like there was a big dip in 2018, if you look at the numbers that are presented in the graph below, they're relatively small. There's nothing greater than $40,000. So I just want you to keep that in perspective when looking at the graph. And as well, this doesn't include development charges. We've pulled that information out as that money goes directly to the reserves. So in 2017 and 2019, your revenue included community guides and subdivision application fees. And the variance that you see in 17 is it was planned but not received. Or it was received in 17, however, not in the budget. Sorry, I said that backwards. In 2019, the variance to budget includes increased revenues from the SHOP Asphodel-Norwood program and higher than expected zoning applications. On the right-hand side, as a comparison of actual to budget expenditures, the differences are largely due to a planning document update that happened in 2018. There's 25,000 which was budgeted, however, actual expenses were zero. So this is a flip to the previous slides that we've seen where the actual costs were less than budget. Okay. Am I going at an okay pace for everybody? Is slow down, speed up? Is this working for everyone?
I think you got a thumbs up there, Linda. Everyone seems to be doing okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks for checking in, though.
Okay. Okay, protection services represents 27% of your levy. It includes fire, police, conservation authority, building, bylaw, and animal control. And again, you can see a line-by-line comparison in the appendices for each department. On the left, as revenue, the variance to budget is largely driven by building permits. Each year, there's been a 45% plus or minus variance in revenue. And on the expense side, on the right-hand side, again, very similar to the slides we've already seen, expenses are well controlled with minimal variances from budget to actual. Okay. We broke down the benchmarks into particular areas just to give you a little better idea than lumping everything together. And so we've broken down fire services. On a per capita basis, Asphodel-Norwood is spending $73 per year per capita on fire service. The average cost is $148. Okay. And then on a very similar chart, police services, the Asphodel-Norwood Township is spending $162 per year versus the average of $259. Okay. The other pieces in protection services are very small compared to those. So we only have the two benchmarking charts. The next department is Recreation and Culture Services, and that is your arenas, which I believe you call recreation in your department budgets, and then parks together. And we're seeing similar results that we've seen in the past. On the left-hand side, recreation and culture, the variance from actual to budgets, or the trend from year to year is very consistent. The variance is relatively small, but it's largely due to ice rentals and canteen revenue. On the right-hand side, again, expenses are relatively consistent year over year with small variances. The difference is attributed to salaries and wages in 18, but see in 19 that they've been adjusted to accurately reflect budget. And you can just see in the line graph as you move your eye across from left to right how that's been corrected. Okay. And then from a benchmarking standpoint, we combine the department. So on a per capita basis, Asphodel-Norwood is spending $149 a year on parks, facilities, and recreation programs. The average cost of your peer communities is $216 a year. Now, keep in mind, we didn't include libraries, museums, or cultural services. So we pulled out some of that information to make sure that we were comparing on an apples to apples perspective. Okay, and then another one that we thought was important, similar to what we did in another benchmarking chart, was as a percentage of revenues, wages, and benefits. So Asphodel-Norwood spends 72% of its recreation revenues on salaries, wages, and benefits. The average percent in the peer communities is 203%. And this makes sense. You have a very small organizational structure. You have a small footprint as far as full-time bodies. And you have a very successful recreation and community participation program. Okay. Transportation is the last, I believe the last department, yes. And it represents 36% of your total levy. So it is the largest piece. It is largely driven through grants and gas tax revenue. This particular slide backs that out, and it just looks at revenue driven at the municipal level. So on the left-hand side, you can see that there's a variance from actual to budget. Again, I want to bring your attention to the scale. It may look large on the screen, but the numbers are very small. So variances to budget include unexpected revenues in culverts in 17 and increased gravel sales in 18 and 19 over expected. On the right-hand side, again, very similar to the charts that you saw before, expense control is very consistent with budget. The largest item in this area is repairs and maintenance to vehicles. And it was the largest, actually, when we were going through the process of the entire budget process, it was one of the things that we talked about at the very, very beginning, where the department had thought that there was an opportunity to increase the accuracy of this number. And as we got into the numbers, he was bang right on. Okay. And then from a benchmark perspective, we did it as a dollar per kilometer of roads. So Asphodel-Norwood spends $8,027 per kilometer of road in 2019. The average is $15,519. And we also showed the median on this because there was such a large variance. And the median cost is $8,352. So it's very, very close from that perspective. Okay.
Maybe does council have any questions on the presentation before we get into any recommendations? Mayor, maybe want to check in and just see on the presentation before we take on to the final step here.
Yeah, perfect, Candace. I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, I can't see everyone in council, so if you do have something, then unmute yourself and speak up.
I can see their hands. No, Lori. Looks like everybody's okay.
Yep, carry on.
Okay,
Everybody's still with me?
everybody's still with you.
Okay. Okay. We have 8 recommendations. And before I get into them, I'll just give you a little background of why we come up with these. As I said, your budgeting process is very accurate. The charts reflect the numbers, tells the story. These are very process related. And we wanted to make sure that they tied into your strategic direction. We wanted to make sure that they were real and they were achievable, and that they were possible within your current structure. So the first recommendation that we have is education for new council members. And it was just an additional focus should be granted to the finance piece during the education process of a new member coming aboard. What it does is it allows the council to make more evidence-based decisions if they fully understand that the information that they're looking at. And it ties into your strategic direction of achieving operational excellence through accountability and governance. And we believe Candace already has a great package to onboard new counselors, and this is just a small piece that will help newly elected officials understand the process at the beginning. Okay. Okay, recommendation number 2 is a budget comparison to trend analysis. And this year-over-year comparison will assist in determining areas that need further investigation. We've completed 2017, 18, and 19. Although looking at that, we are looking at the past. And I believe that, having 20 and 21 would be very useful information to look at to further that trend from a 3-year period to a 5-year period. We'll provide Candace the templates so that if you choose to use them, they're available to put in the budgets for the next 2 years. Okay. Recommendation number 3 is reserve management policy. And reserves, as you know, ensure the financial viability of the future. They're a key part of the process. We thought the addition of a reserve continuity schedule of actuals and with future expectations would assist in seeing that vision. It would also assist in new council members to share the vision of the past council and to help them educate of what's needed in the future. And again, that's just to ensure that you're adequately funded for future requirements. Your reserve management policy is your future. In having that clear map will help with your strategic direction and sustainability. Okay. Okay, recommendation number 4, long-range financial plan. So long-range financial plan, again, will assist with prioritizing your financial requirements and obligations. It is a master document that takes your strategic plan, your budgets, your asset management plan, and puts it all together under one document. It will assist in ensuring long-term sustainability, and it will also help you create that reserve policy that we talked about in number 3. Currently, water and wastewater is the only department that doesn't have a capital plan, and we recommend that they do a 5-year wastewater and water plan. Again, from a strategic direction point of view, it is directly attributed to sustainability, and it creates a more accurate estimation of where you want to go forward. Okay. Recommendation number 5. This came out of the transportation services and a little bit in the water. And this was identified by the department heads at the very beginning as of one of the things that they felt would help them in the budget process. And that was to have a repairs and maintenance program set up to accurately predict what the repairs and maintenance costs would be for that year. When we spoke with them, a lot of them are very knowledgeable, but they have it all in here and it's all in their heads. And it's fantastic that you have them in place, but it is a very good tool to actually have it mapped out. And this will tie into the next recommendation as well, because it helps build that succession planning should someone not be able to fulfill their duties for whatever reason in that capacity. And it leaves a clear roadmap for the next person that has to look at it and help with the budget process. So we identified in transportation and wastewater We estimated a 5 to 6% of savings that could be achieved if it's mapped out ahead of time. And then in addition to that, as part of the process, was adding a list of approved vendors or a list of best practices of vendors of who to use for that maintenance program. And again, it will reduce your operational expenses, and it'll help feed your reserve requirements in both transportation and water. Okay. And that leads us into recommendation number 6 as business continuity. And you have a business continuity plan. Our suggestion is to expand it to ensure personnel and assets are protected and decisions and processes can function quickly and accurately. And this, I think we can all relate to this year, is expect the unexpected. When you have the business continuity plan in place for all pieces, it ensures that the municipality will function at any level. If people cannot be there or assets, something happens to them, then you can quickly pivot and continue without any service deficits or service. I'm fumbling with my words now. without hurting your service levels. And again, it's very important. You have such a small structure, so a lot of the knowledge is in very few people. So having that business continuity will help with that process. Okay. And recommendation number 7, public input. So the budget process should include a formalized way to gain input from the residents and community groups at the beginning of the budget. So before each new budget, we're suggesting that a staff or a township survey take place to gain insights to what their requirements are. And that will assist the township in making evidence-based decision through public input. So it just switches the point of which public is involved. They're involved in the input as opposed to just receiving the outputs. And that will help in your strategic direction of engaging your community and citizens through public consultation. Okay, and one last recommendation. I feel like I've been talking forever here. Public education. Delivering clear information supports governmental transparency and informs residents about budgeted related matters and adds credibility to the decision-making process. So we have suggested some promotional material that will help educate the public on how funds are being allocated. So on a very simplistic manner, they don't have to understand municipal accounting. It will just help understand and educate how their tax dollars are being spent. And again, that addresses your strategic direction of engaging your communities and citizens through citizen engagement. And it makes a more transparent and credible budgeting process. So, I feel like I've been talking forever. And I'm more than happy to take any of your feedback, discuss any of the slides. If there's anything in the longer report that we didn't address in this particular presentation, please bring our attention to it, and I'll certainly entertain your questions as to the best of our capability.
Thanks, Linda. Just a comment. I didn't like any of it. No, I'm kidding. Just trying to break up, make you smile today. No, it was a good report. I know, talking with Candace, that the report had a lot more depth to it and had a lot more pages, and I'm glad it got downsized to the level that is able to be understood by the public and ourselves when people go ahead and read this. So is there any questions from council at this time? Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I thought it was an excellent presentation. It really made me think about the process, and Candace actually answered many of my questions. I had 13 that I sent to her, but I do have one question comment, and I think that people may wonder. I was just wondering why library services were not included in the process. I would have been very interested to have seen the comparisons with the benchmarks from other communities.
I'll answer that. And Adrian, Linda, you don't have to answer that. So the libraries were not included in the scope of work. It wasn't included in the when we submitted into the province for the province to pay for. So we couldn't allocate funding dollars to that. Now that we have the template and the comparator municipalities, we'll be able to then easily pull the library points together at a staffing level. We don't need the consultant to do that for us. We know what benchmark communities they've used. We can go into the FIR using their template and prepare that if council wants to see it. And then we can obviously provide that to the library board as they are the governing body. I think the library board would have had to have applied for the funding in order to get, for it to go that extra step with the province to get the funds. They would have had to have applied because they're the governing body. But now that we've got the template and we have the process and the benchmarking communities, I can easily pull the FIR information out from those other 5 communities and plug it in and see where we land.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just to comment on that, I'm hoping council doesn't ask the staff to do this in the near future, that we can take a little bit of a break, as this COVID times have put a lot of extra effort in from our staff to get us through. So Deputy Mayor Burt, please.
Yeah, I do have other questions, but just to comment on what Councillor War had said, and sorry, through you. Every year there's the annual library survey as well. And I know from being in that position a couple of times, there's a lot of comparators there. And it was interesting when I saw the comparators of some of the communities here. It's what that I had used pulling out to look at different library services. So there's a lot of information in the public library survey that is done every year. So just for staff's sake, a lot of the numbers are there. So instead of creating your own, you might be able to pull some of that out, and it's public knowledge just on the, I forget where you'd find it, but anyway, public library survey, it's the information, there is a lot of information there. Maybe not so much with the finances, but services and that sort of thing. So that's just some information moving forward. And I'll let somebody else go before I make my comments. So go ahead.
Thanks. Anyone else at this time? Okay, Councillor Walsh, and you're muted. You look so surprised when I say that.
So I keep quiet. For you, Mayor. Just overall comment, I love a great report. Well done. I love having the benchmarks. Not that we necessarily want to do things the way that other townships do. We all do things in our own way that we feel is right for us, but it is nice to have that comparison with other townships. And I think for me, a couple of learnings are under recommendation number 5 and number 6. When you talk about, we are a small group. We have a lot of people that is, I think you comment, have a lot of that information up in their head, which is awesome and great. But we have found an experience this year with our arena manager being down that all that information up in their head versus it being down on paper is a little more challenging when that person isn't here. So I love that approach that we're going to be able to document some of those things in terms of services that we have and maintenance programs. Again, just as you said, that we can pivot on a dime and not really fall down on our level of service. Not that I think we have, but I think we had a bit of an aha this year when we lost Greg for a period of time, that he done a lot over there in the community center that a lot of it was up in his head, not wrote down, that we were fortunate we were able to find those answers, but having it documented is definitely a better way of going about it. So thank you for that.
Anyone else at this time, or do you have a follow-up? Councillor Archer, did I see your hand? I'm sorry.
I just was going to say that any questions I had have been answered. It's a great report. It's very, very well detailed. Great job. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burt, please, follow-ups.
Yeah, just kind of following up on Barry's with the continuity report. I think that certainly is highlighted just in all of the charts and the graphs, how low we are in the wages, but yet how high the service level is. And we really have to watch that. So having that, really having that in the forefront, I think, is important. And just on a note, as far as the public input for the survey, I think that's a great idea. But also as far as keeping the public aware of what's going on, certainly this report is a big step forward, and having all that information easy to read for council, certainly easy to read for public. And I had spoke with Candace about this, and we have different night. Well, if we ever get back to some form of normal, different nights, shop, Asphodel-Norwood, open houses, that sort of thing. And I just wondered if, maybe each department can do a display. It would have to be, numbers and percentages would have to be changed from year to year, but just to give that high level overview, lots of graphic, that sort of thing. I think it ties hand in hand with our communications, public communications policies and strat plans. And even something like that, it can go into the high schools for municipal week or, career days and that sort of thing. So there's lots of ways we could go about that as well. So just some information there. And I really don't have any concerns or questions. The report was great. Lots of work from staff and certainly from Structure Harrop and from the council members involved. So thank you. Great report. Love to read it.
Thanks, Deputy. So there you have it. I just, when a good job's been done and your homework's been done and you've double checked everything, that if council doesn't have questions and it's mostly just comments, that a job was well done. So what this has done is it's probably just created a whole bunch more work for our staff in the long run, because you've sparked interest in so many different categories. I have a couple questions I'm going to give, but it might only be for Candace, but I'm not sure. But you talked about the reserves to educate council more, a new council coming in. In that case, that I would stress that if the reserves are shown to a new council, that they have the understanding that it's not a reserve that they can get their sister's road paved just down the street or something like that. The reserves are set aside for a specific item, not a wish list that a councillor may have. And as we know in reality now, that anything that a councillor may have as a wish list probably doesn't come to fruition until the next term of council. So that's not necessarily a question, it's more of a comment on that. But you touched on the maintenance management for water, wastewater. So my question is I believe that we were starting to do some mapping of our infrastructure in the ground and one thing after another. Would that not fall underneath the same category, Candace, that some work's being done in that department?
Thank you, Mayor. To go back to your previous comment about the reserves and educating council, I think the Conflict of Interest Act and the Councillor Code of Conduct will address all of those long before we get to the reserve policy. But I'll make that a note when I'm looking towards the next councillor education program. But as for, you're talking about the CCTV programs. I don't know if you remember back on the water wastewater slide in 2018, you've seen where expenses went above actual and it was only time between the 2 years. That was the year that it was identified. The year after we left Aqua and went internal, we started a rotating 4-year CCTV maintenance program. So that already exists. So we do a 25% of the village every year. Then we take a year off for reporting. We start the 25% over, and it takes 4 years to do CCTV work through the whole village. So yes, there is maintenance programs for certain assets. The recommendation isn't stating that there's none, because there's obviously is maintenance programs that already exist. Kyle has a very aggressive preventative maintenance program, PM, in the mesh software that he utilizes to ensure that certain assets receive their their regular calibration, depending, if it's a flow meter, those types of things. So there is certain programs in place. What they're looking for is that to be tied to budget. So the larger items, to start looking at maintenance and what do we need next year, the year after. So it's easier for Jeff's department, for Public Works, actually is really where it's going to hit, because you can say, okay, the grader needs, we assume the grader is going to need tires, which is $8,000 to $10,000 in 2026. So do we want to start putting funds aside? Do we just know that that's out there and that the regular tax budget will eat it? We don't need to worry about a reserve. All of those conversations need to happen. So it's just more taking a look at the equipment and the assets and trying to predict the maintenance that there. And then there's always the one-off, such as the $60,000 break on the grader that nobody could have seen coming back in 2017, I believe that was. But it's just the regular stuff, the regular predictable stuff that we can put pen to paper to say, okay, we need a program, tie in the programs that already exist and tie in the assets and the pieces of equipment that maybe aren't being tracked, and then create it in a document that'll help feed the budget moving forward, and see if we can realize some savings there. And if not, at least ensure that those maintenance lines are more in line with the budget versus actual.
Thanks for that, because when it says that there's no plan of attack or whatever like that, I just didn't want the public to not think that we weren't on top of certain things. And if somebody were to read this just being out in the public, there might be a misunderstanding that we're not looking after what we have. And I just wanted it better explained, and you did a good job. Thanks.
We can reword that, Mayor, if you would like to reflect.
Candace can answer any question. So it'll just come flying at her down the road. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Burt.
But you need to write it down in case Candace isn't here.
I just have a follow-up on that question. So any of the programs, there's the mesh software and other software, I forget the names of it. Is the software we have capable of doing that maintenance overall program, or will we have to purchase some other program to bring all that in?
So the mesh software is capable of tracking preventative maintenance on any assets, and it's already in place now, but it won't do the financial component of it.
Okay.
But I really don't think we need to purchase software to track to track. I think what the programs we have, we just need to utilize them.
Okay, no, that's all I was wondering, just to see if they were in place. And I do have one more comment, but I'll see if anybody else needs to speak first.
Okay, I'll speak. Thanks. I wasn't quite done yet either, so that's good. The other one, talking about Deputy Mayor Burt touched on it, about the wage equity around not quite up to par with what's around the area. My understanding is, Candace, that that's going to be coming forward one of our next council meetings. And I think having Structure Harrop acknowledge that fact as they were doing the research to find that out was quite important, and the timing couldn't be any better on that. So if there's anything you need to add to that, Candace, or if you want to clarify what I've just said, then go ahead and help out there if you want.
Yes, so the 5-year pay equity review is up and is going to be presented to council on March 9th. And you'll see the rest of the story during that meeting. So yes, this was the beginning of the story, and you'll see some of it come to fruition. There was different there were some different benchmark communities because we had to use 13 for that one to make sure we're catching all of the positions, where in this specific line-by-line budget review was more high-level comprehensive, not just wage-driven. We looked at all different things to choose those 5 communities. But yes, the rest of the story is coming to council on March 9th.
Right.
Very good.
Deputy Mayor Burt, you had a follow-up again?
Actually, that was one of my comments that I don't need to address, but just one more thing, just on the follow-up kind of in the public communications end of it. I think staff do a very good job. It's pretty much everywhere we need it to be between our, well, local paper, although not everyone gets it, and on boards and throughout the community. We've certainly added boards around the community and certainly a online presence as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't get everybody, but from both a council and a taxpayer and a resident standpoint, I truly feel if you live in a community, it's also up to you to try a little bit to get that information. As staff and as council, we can't spoon feed in information to people. So I do think staff do a really good job at getting communications out there in all the different ways that is available to them. And just a comment, it looks like it's already been done because there's a lot of good new graphics on the newsletter that will be going out with the next tax bill via mail. So I just wanted to touch base on that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Ward, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, just a follow-up. It was regarding the recommendation number 5 and about retaining human talent that we have. And I was just wondering, and this question would be for Candace, about suggesting a maintenance management plan. And does anyone in the transportation department fix the equipment, like a heavy equipment mechanic right now? And I'm just wondering about onboarding that kind of human talent, because that would be beneficial in achieving some of these benchmarks that we are predicting for repairs and mitigating those maintenance costs down the road.
Sure. Yes. In the recent years, when we've had to recruit a public works operator position, it is always a conversation between the manager and I to look for resumes or applications that have that skill set. I can tell you that the heavy equipment mechanic, the salary and wages for someone that has taken on that career is higher than it is for a public works heavy equipment operator. So actually pulling a mechanic to come and be an operator has been challenging. We have not been successful with that to date. That being said, this has highlighted a conversation between the manager and I as whether we need to take a look at the savings that could be had, even if we see an increase in salaries and wages due to obviously maybe holding a different position on the salary grid once that position is evaluated, maybe would help offset a decrease in the maintenance costs. That exercise has not been done. I don't know what the result of that would be. I don't know if that would result in savings or not, because I haven't undertaken that feasibility study. But there is certain aspects of heavy equipment, though, that needs to be done out of house. The safeties, anything to do with potentially any CVORs, anything that's kind of driven through the ministry, regardless of what talent we have in house. We're not a licensed garage, so right. They still have to be sent out. And to be honest, that's where a lot of the maintenance comes from, is when you send those trucks out the doors for the safeties, and they just seem to be upping the bar consistently for those equipment and what they need to have in place to achieve that certification each year keeps going up, which then as the equipment gets older and they keep raising the bar to achieve that certification on the heavy equipment, then obviously to close that gap is money. So it is a feasibility study that we need to take a look at, but I don't know whether you're going to see that talent in-house. You tend to start to see it at a municipality, in my experience from talking to them, around the 12 to 13,000 people population. So I know the municipality of Trent Hills has that talent in-house. But, you know, as far as the lower tier municipalities, our size, we don't have it. But then is it something we could share amongst a couple of municipalities? Maybe. I think it's a conversation that's been highlighted, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it's definitely something that's going to get some airtime over the course of the next year. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else on council at this time have any question? Okay, I had a follow-up there actually from what Deputy Mayor Byrd had said about the budget communication part. Just, it's not a question, it's more just a comment, but at county, when they sent theirs out to the public for budget consultations or questions from the public, so there's 80,000 people or 90 some odd thousand people in the county, they didn't receive any questions at all. So, I mean, that's unheard of, I guess, in the consultants world, but it was a shock for us too when we got that. So, I mean, I think from what we do for advertising, and I'm not taking away from that at all, I think we do a pretty darn good job on that for sure, just to get it out there. Candace, please.
Yes, Deputy Burt must took a page out of my book, because I have said that line so many times that I do believe there's a certain amount of onus, and she's heard me say that so many times over the last 7 years, but so much onus on the residents to be able to educate themselves. But that being said, I do think that we have, what I think the consultant is highlighting here, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have the communication tools in place. We just need to ensure that we're using those vehicles that are there to promote the budget. And so we've highlighted, we took that rate, we knew that it was coming, it was highlighted during the conversations with staff. So that is why the newsletter has what it has in it, which is, you know, where do your tax dollars go? Where do the majority of your tax dollars go? Those types of questions being answered on the tax insert, and we will continue to capitalize on those opportunities. And I can tell council and commit that a budget survey will go out prior to commencing budget talks. So it'll go out early summer to be able to have the results of that, to be able to include them, because obviously first round comes in September. So staff needs time to digest those results and formalize it into council report and get it to council. We have always used a benchmark of approximately 3%. If we receive 3% of our population, if they respond to any of our communications, we are happy and pleased with that. Sometimes we've hit 7 to 8%, which we just did with our recreation survey. We were 7.6% of the population responded, which is a great number. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in feedback, it's a great number. We'll take it. So we are learning what methods of communication work, and we've learned over the past 7 years of what does not work. So I think we just need to keep moving forward with those and engaging the public at the beginning of the process, and then educating them at the end of the process. And I agree, we can do a bit better in regards to that, but I do think we've got the vehicles in place. We just need to use them, you know. And so you're going to see some big changes with that with 2021. I think we can do a better job, and I think we can do that. And I really enjoy Deputy Mayor Burt's suggestion of the, I guess, the education boards that can be used and set up at Showcase Asphodel-Norwood, Canada Day, any events at the library, any events that they can be loaned out and set up there. Just learn about your township. They can be there in a corner as people wandering through, and you know, even if a few people at each event read it that wouldn't have read it anyplace else, then they've done their job. And that's a simple one, because it's a quick and dirty. It's one and done. And that's what staff likes. We have all of the continual education pieces that we can handle. It's a lot to keep social media updated, websites updated, 3 social media accounts, community press ads, community boards. It's a lot, you know, to keep up to date every day. So those boards, I think that's something we'll take under advisement. I think that's actually a good idea, because we can get them up and done, and then leave it up to the community to read them at their leisure. So that's my comments on that.
Perfect. I just had one more, but just another thing there that the consultation, you see how much it sparked with all the questions, and then already we're well on our way to making our township better just by having this one little meeting here. So my last one here has got to do with the transportation. You said in your budget or in the talks, it was around 37% of our budget, I believe. Somewhere around there. And I just wondered, more a question to Candace, I guess, is that if, just for instance, so we're paving the center line this year. So that's going to be paved, but so the gravel, we won't need as much gravel, one thing after another. I just assume that our budget, so we're about $8,000 per kilometer on our roads. The price is probably not going to change, but the man hours probably will by having to maintain something. So we give a little bit, we take a little bit, and we save a lot, I believe. Is that not the right analogy on that, Candace?
I think the consultant slide was per kilometer winter maintenance. So I think regardless of the surface, we still plow it. So I don't think that 8,000 per kilometer probably from a winter maintenance perspective is going to change. So that's one side of the coin. But then when you flip it to the other side of the coin, yeah, so there's a couple of things. Surface treatment it's a highly traveled road, center line is, so you're going to have to see a maintenance layer every 5 to 7 years. But no, we don't have to spend as many man hours grading center line. Obviously, there's a fair amount of manpower that's taken to grade that road, as well as gravel that road. But that cost will probably get offset every 5 years when we have to put a maintenance, or 6 years when we have to put a maintenance layer on it. So I think you're going to save each year to spend it all in year 6. But overall, it's a higher level of service, and that whole road is going to be safer dealing with the drainage. They're not going to have the flooding. The intersections are going to be dealt with. So we've increased the level of service. We're not increasing the cost. So that's a win.
Thanks. Yeah. So that was one thing I misunderstood then, was the per the kilometers for sure. And thanks for getting that straight in my mind. Deputy Mayor Burke, please.
And I apologize, I feel like I'm talking too much, but I just wanted to follow up on Paula's comment about the maintenance end. And just so that all of council are aware, certainly the mayor and I are aware that the county is going through a very extensive service delivery review and looking at, I wouldn't say partnerships, but where can savings be found within the county and along with lower tiers. And I know Candace is well aware of this. And certainly where can services or that type of thing be shared. So I just wanted to let you know that it's certainly being looked at, and whether maintenance is one of them, where it can be shared with an upper tier or neighboring lower tier. All of that's being looked at. So just to follow that up with Councillor War.
Thanks. Okay, last chance for any councillors if they have any follow-up questions. Okay, seeing no hands, then I want to thank Adrian and Linda. And then if there's anything that you'd like to close out with, and I seen Candace put her hand up there also. So whoever wants to start, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for having us do this project. And every time we work with you guys, it's wonderful. It's a really enjoyable process. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Linda, you had your hand up, I see.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that it's been a pleasure working with you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councillors, and of course, Candace. And please thank all your department heads. I appreciated their openness and honesty in giving us the information. And we hope that you find this a valuable tool in the future.
Well, you've created us lots of extra work here, that's for sure.
Which is what my comment was going to be about, actually.
You can blame me.
There is some timelines recommended in the recommendation, so they will be transferred over to the action list.
Yeah.
And then we will do our best to hit the targets. Some are obviously ongoing, but the ones that are kind of one, like a policy, etc., they'll just get added over to the action list. So that's council, that's where you need to watch for it moving forward. Okay.
Yep. Very good. Well, anyone that's watching out there in the virtual world, if you want some good consultants, call Strexer Harrop. Simple as that. That's the little plug with the discount, I think, right?
Oh,
Anyways,
goodness.
I'm going to call for a motion then to receive this presentation and to have staff implement the recommendations presented. Looking for that motion. Councillor Archer and Deputy Mayor Burt, all in favor, please. And that's carried unanimous. Okay, thank you, folks. If you want to stick with us, you can watch us in action or you can just fade away. But
I'm sure they have other things to do.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, next on our amended agenda then would be R2. So are we waiting for Jeff to present this? Candace, our CAO clerk treasurer, will give us this. It's concerning the tree removal on Centerline Road.
Yes, so our manager of public works is busy out on the road, so I didn't pull him off the roads to deliver this report. I thought we could get through it without him, but he is available by phone if we do have a couple of questions. So yes, the tree cutting tender for Centerline Road. Obviously this would be, I guess, step 3 for the reconstruction, was tendered out and closed yesterday with 2 bids being received. You can see the results in the staff report. A couple of pieces of information that has been drawn out by councillor questions I thought I would share with you so that all of council is aware. It is approximately 100 trees. They are all located within the road allowance. There is no trees on private property. The road has been surveyed. We are doing a extra section of surveying because there is a couple of trees. I touched base with the manager before this meeting, and there is one section we're going to do a different type of survey on next week. But anyway, all trees that are going to be removed will be on the township road allowance. Approximately 25 to 26 you need a bucket truck to remove. Yes, that great big huge oak is coming down. It has been a conversation amongst the residents. It is starting to die at the top. So having it completed during this project, obviously we can't go around, the water can't go around it when we ditch the road properly. So it is coming down, unfortunately. It was probably one of the main trees in this township, even back when it was surveyed, I would think. So we may do something with a section of wood out of that tree, just because it's probably one of the original trees in Asphodel. So I don't really know what we're going to do, but we're going to try to come up with whether we get a wood carving made out of it or something. The wood it was part of the tender. So they priced it as if the wood is retained by the contractor. That was included in the tender document. So you can see that the lowest tender was $18,000 plus HST. It is well within the township's budget allotment for the Centerline Road reconstruction line item. So we are recommending that it be awarded to Van Til Tree Care.
Okay, any questions of council? Pretty straightforward. Seeing no questions then, so the motion would be then to what the CAO suggested in this report, that it be awarded to Van Til. Motion by Councillor Walsh, seconded by Councillor War. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, so next then would be the close of our meeting, basically. So I'd be asking the clerk for our confirming bylaw.
Yes, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council of the Township of Asphodel-Norwood held on February 23rd, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time in numbered bylaw 2021-14.
Motion by Counselor Walsh, seconded by Counselor Archer. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at 2:18 and then to have our regular meeting of March 9th, 2021, or at the call of the chair. Motion by Deputy Mayor Burt, seconded by Counselor War. All in favor? And that's carried. Well, thank you, staff. Thank you, council, for a good meeting, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon then.
Be safe.
Thank you very much. Take
Yeah.
care, everyone.